Welcome to our new episode, Shadow over Manhattan, The Forgotten Revolution. It was 1776, and the streets of New York City whispered secrets no map recorded. Smoke from the ongoing battles drifted along the East River, but the true war was not being fought in open fields or atop wooden ships. It was hidden in alleyways, behind locked doors, and inside the minds of men whose names would never appear in history books. Dr. Elias Monroe, a 32-year-old physician and amateur cryptographer, ran through the narrow cobblestone streets of Lower Manhattan. Clutched tightly under his coat was a small leather-bound journal, its pages filled with strange symbols, coded messages, and sketches that seemed almost prophetic. "Keep moving," a whisper urged from the shadows. A figure in a tattered cloak darted alongside him, their face hidden beneath the hood. Monroe's heart pounded. The British had stepped up patrols, and spies were everywhere. But this journal, discovered in the ruins of an old Dutch warehouse, promised knowledge that could change the course of the American Revolution. Hidden among its pages were names, dates, and locations of secret loyalist meetings and, more disturbingly, references to a hidden society influencing both the British and the Continental Congress. They reached an abandoned warehouse on the docks. Inside, lanterns flickered across crates of salt, tobacco, and sugar, but the real treasure was concealed in a trapdoor under the floorboards. Monroe lifted it to reveal a small, dimly lit chamber filled with manuscripts, maps, and vials containing substances that shimmered unnaturally in the light. This could be it, the key to the revolution that no one else knew existed. The figure removed their hood. It was Margaret Sinclair, the daughter of a prominent colonial merchant, and, secretly, one of the city's most effective spies. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. "They're watching, Elias, and they will come for this journal. But if we decode it, we can control the flow of the war itself." Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of drums from British barracks. Inside, Monroe and Sinclair realized they were standing on the precipice of a conspiracy older than the colonies themselves, one that could shake the foundations of freedom before it had fully begun. Chapter 2. The Coded Society. The warehouse was silent except for the soft scratching of Monroe's quill. By lantern light, he and Sinclair began transcribing the cryptic symbols in the leather-bound journal. At first, it seemed like nonsense. Jagged lines, spirals, dots in sequences that resembled stars. But Sinclair, who had studied secret codes under her father's instruction, recognized a pattern. "These aren't just letters," she whispered. "They're coordinates, times, and initials. Someone wanted only the initiated to understand." Monroe leaned over, eyes narrowing. "And the initials? They correspond to every influential figure in New York right now. Merchants, politicians, even some officers in the British Army." Sinclair shivered. "A society controlling both sides of the war. That means we've been fighting battles that were pre-decided, manipulated by people we've never even seen." The journal hinted at something bigger. Buried within the coded entries were references to an ancient Dutch secret order dating back to the early 1600s, a group called De Schaduwkring, the Circle of Shadows. According to the journal, their purpose was to guide commerce, politics, and warfare in the colonies to benefit their unseen masters. This explains the mysterious disappearances, the unclaimed shipments, and even the hidden treasury we've heard rumors of. Every event we thought spontaneous has been orchestrated. Margaret pointed to a section marked with a small crimson stamp. "And look at this. Meetings, locations, and a symbol I've seen before in the Dutch archives. A triangle enclosing a serpent. They meet here, at night, in the city's abandoned catacombs." Monroe swallowed hard. The tunnels beneath Manhattan. I've explored parts of them when I was younger. Dangerous, unstable, and largely forgotten. If we go there, we might find the heart of this society. Margaret nodded. Or we might never come out. That night, cloaked in darkness, they made their way to the entrance of the tunnels. Rats scattered at their feet. The air was damp, thick with the scent of decay and old stone. As they descended, Monroe noticed inscriptions on the walls, the same triangle and serpent motif etched deep into the brick. The deeper they went, the more elaborate the carvings became. Sequences of numbers, diagrams of star constellations, and cryptic warnings in Dutch and Latin. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared ahead. Monroe froze. "Misters?" he whispered. Sinclair shook her head. "No, candlelight doesn't flicker like that." They crept closer and saw a circle of figures, cloaked, faces hidden. One of them spoke in a low, melodious tone, and the others murmured in unison, a chant that seemed to vibrate through the stone walls themselves. Monroe felt a chill run down his spine. This was no ordinary meeting. This was ritualistic, powerful, and dangerous. Sinclair whispered, "This is it, Diskadukring in action." A figure in the center lifted a parchment. Symbols glowed faintly under the lanterns. Monroe squinted and recognized some of the same star-based coordinates from the journal. The society wasn't just gathering information, they were directing movements, battles, and alliances across the colonies using secret knowledge. Monroe's hand shook as he wrote in his notebook, "If this continues, the revolution is not ours to win. It belongs to them." A sudden creak echoed. One of the cloaked figures had noticed them. A dagger glimmed in the dim light. Monroe grabbed Sinclair's arm. "Run!" The pair darted deeper into the catacombs, weaving through tunnels, their lanterns swinging wildly. The chanting faded behind them, replaced by the pounding of their own hearts. As they emerged into the early morning streets of Manhattan, Sinclair gasped. They control everything, and if they've seen the journal—" Monroe clenched his fists. "Then they'll come for us next." But somewhere deep in the shadows of the city, the members of Diskadukring were already plotting their response, unaware that two determined patriots had glimpsed their most secret machinations, a discovery that could either save the revolution or destroy it entirely. Chapter 3. The Hidden Alliances. Manhattan had yet to awaken when Monroe and Sinclair returned to the safe house, their breaths ragged and hearts still hammering from the escape. The streets above were calm, indifferent to the shadowy war unfolding below. Sinclair spread the journal across the table. "We've seen their power," she said. "The Circle doesn't just observe, they manipulate. Entire battles, supplies, even politicians. If we don't act, the revolution could be lost before it truly begins." Monroe nodded. "We need allies, people who understand espionage, codes, and subterfuge. Not soldiers, not generals, but those who move in the shadows." They first approached Samuel Adams's lesser-known cousin, Jonathan Reed, a clerk at the Boston Custom House. Reed had quietly opposed British taxation and, unbeknownst to most, was a master of cipher writing. "I've heard rumors of the Circle," Reed whispered when he saw the journal. "Their reach is vast. They control shipping routes, informants, and even some continental officers. But if you have proof—" Monroe placed the journal on the table, showing the symbols and coordinates. Reed's eyes widened. "This is it! This is the key to intercepting their moves before they happen." Next, Sinclair contacted Eliza Worthington, a widow and socialite, whose salons were a cover for intelligence gathering. Her influence among merchants, tavern owners, and city officials made her an ideal source of information. "They think no one notices," Eliza said, examining the journal. "But the pattern is sloppy for someone so careful. If we move correctly, We can intercept their shipments, spread misinformation, and perhaps dismantle them from within. By nightfall, the trio had planned their first move: infiltrate a shipment scheduled to arrive at the Brooklyn docks, a delivery marked in the journal with a triangle and serpent. The shipment was rumored to contain coded messages and supplies for British agents loyal to the Circle. The Brooklyn operation. Under cover of fog, Monroe, Sinclair, and Reed made their way to the docks. Lanterns flickered along the pier, and the sound of water slapping against wooden pilings masked their movements. From a hidden vantage point, they watched workers unload crates. One crate, marked with a faint serpent symbol, was moved toward a British convoy wagon. Monroe signaled, and Reed quietly pried open the crate. Inside were bundles of letters, maps, and a small chest of coins, exactly as the journal had predicted. Sinclair scanned the letters. "They're coded," she whispered, "and the codes match the coordinates in the journal." Monroe frowned. "This isn't just information. They're directing military actions in advance, manipulating both sides. We need to break the code now, before another convoy is sent." Hours passed as they worked by lantern light, deciphering the letters, tracing supply routes, and predicting British movements. By dawn, they had discovered the Circle's next target, a hidden cache in Westchester, set to arrive in less than 3 days. Sinclair's eyes gleamed with determination. "If we can intercept it, we disrupt their operation entirely, and we might expose them to the Continental leaders." But as they prepared to leave, a shadow fell across the dock. Monroe turned sharply. A man in a hooded cloak stood watching them, unmoving. In his hand gleamed a small dagger. "You shouldn't be here," the man said quietly. "The Circle knows you have the journal, and they will come for you." Monroe and Sinclair exchanged a glance. There was no time for hesitation. With Reed's help, they vanished into the fog, leaving the stranger behind. Back at the safe house, they regrouped. Reed spoke first. "This is bigger than I thought. If the Circle moves fast, we might only get one chance to stop them. We need more allies, and someone to protect the journal." Sinclair nodded. "We have to move carefully. Every ally counts, but every contact is a potential traitor. The Circle has spies everywhere, in taverns, shipping offices, even in the Continental Army." Monroe's hand hovered over the journal. "Then we fight in the shadows too. They've shaped the war this long. Now it's our turn." As the first light of dawn broke over Manhattan, one single truth became clear. The revolution was no longer only about liberty and independence. It was about knowledge, secrecy, and survival in a world ruled by invisible hands. Chapter 4. The Siege of the Circle. Night had fallen over Manhattan once again, but the city felt different, darker, as if the streets themselves were holding their breath. Monroe, Sinclair, and Reed moved silently along the rooftops, avoiding patrols and lanterns. Their target? A warehouse in the old Dutch Quarter, where the Circle was scheduled to meet in secret. Sinclair whispered, "This is it, the first real opportunity to see them in action, and to disrupt their plans." Monroe nodded, eyes scanning the street below. "Remember, we're not here to fight openly. Observation first, interception second." They descended into the alley behind the warehouse, finding a loose hatch in the side wall. Reed pried it open, and they slipped inside. The interior was dimly lit by hanging lanterns, casting long shadows across crates and barrels. But at the center of the room they saw the Circle gathered. At least a dozen figures, cloaked, faces obscured. One stood taller than the others, holding an ornately carved staff tipped with a serpent. Monroe whispered, "The leader, that must be the Grand Master, and these are the Inner Circle members." The Grand Master spoke, his voice low and commanding. "The coordinates have been set. By next full moon, all operations in New England must be completed. No interference will be tolerated." Sinclair leaned close to Monroe. They're coordinating attacks, supply seizures, and intelligence flow across multiple colonies, and we have proof. Reed's hand trembled over his notebook, recording every symbol, word, and order he could overhear. The trio had come for observation, but as the meeting progressed, an opportunity presented itself. A crate in the corner, marked with the serpent triangle symbol, contained letters and maps, exactly the same type they had intercepted at Brooklyn docks. If they could steal it, they would cripple the Circle's network temporarily. Monroe signaled. With precise timing, they moved toward the crate. Sinclair's fingers brushed the locks, popping them open silently. Reed lifted the bundle, heart pounding. But then, a cold laugh echoed through the warehouse. Lanterns flickered, and a dozen cloaked figures spun toward them. "You shouldn't be here," the Grand Master said, stepping into the light. His eyes glinted behind the shadow of his hood. "The journal brought you, and it will bind you to us or destroy you." Monroe froze. Sinclair gritted her teeth. Reed's hands shook, but he held the letters tight. "Run!" Sinclair shouted. Chaos erupted. Cloaked members lunged with daggers, but Monroe and Sinclair were ready. Using ropes and crates for cover, they darted through the shadows, Reed close behind. The warehouse became a maze of pursuit. Lanterns toppled, shattering glass and spilling flames across wooden floors. Monroe realized that if they were caught, the journal, the knowledge they had painstakingly gathered, would be lost forever. Finally, after a tense chase through the labyrinthine building, they escaped through a side door into the empty night. The cold air hit them like a wave. Behind them, the warehouse's chaos continued, but they were free, for now. Back at the safe house, they spread the stolen letters across the table. Each one contained detailed plans for the next series of operations by the Circle, ambushes, supply diversions, and coded communications. Monroe looked at Sinclair and Reed. "This is it. This is our chance to dismantle them piece by piece, but we have to be careful. Every step we take, they'll be watching." Sinclair nodded, eyes fierce. "And we'll be ready. They've underestimated us, and that's their first mistake." As dawn broke over Manhattan, the trio realized one terrifying truth. The war wasn't just fought on battlefields. It was being waged in the shadows by those who understood secrets better than muskets. And they had just entered the deadliest game of all. Chapter 5. The Labyrinth of Lies. The city of Manhattan had begun to awake, but the trio moved like phantoms through shadowed streets and abandoned warehouses. Every alley seemed a trap, every stranger a potential spy for Deschadurkring. Monroe whispered, "We can't trust anyone outside this circle. The moment someone sees the journal, it's over." Sinclair nodded. "And even inside, there are layers. The Circle always has layers." Reed adjusted the stolen letters in his bag. "I've mapped the patterns. The Circle uses old Dutch tunnels beneath the city, but they're more than passages. They're a labyrinth with secret chambers, dead ends, and traps." The trio descended into one of the larger tunnels, its brick walls slick with moisture. Faint symbols, triangles, serpents, and stars marked the way, some carved centuries ago. Monroe studied them carefully. These markings aren't just guidance, they're warnings. Hours passed as they navigated twists, turns, and hidden doors. At one point, a false wall opened suddenly, revealing a narrow passage filled with spikes on the floor. Sinclair's eyes widened. They expect intruders. But who designs traps that haven't been used in centuries? Monroe pressed forward. Someone obsessed with control. Someone who knows the city, its people, and its history better than anyone else. Finally, they reached a chamber illuminated by lanterns. Inside, members of the Circle gathered around a table. Maps were spread out, and letters similar to the ones they had intercepted earlier were being distributed. One man, mid-30s, noticed them immediately. "Intruders!" he shouted, reaching for a hidden blade. Monroe pulled Sinclair and Reed back. Shadows shifted as more members emerged from side passages. The trio was cornered. Then Reed noticed something, a small panel beneath the table. Quickly, he pressed it, and a hidden grate opened. Without hesitation, they dove through, narrowly avoiding the circle's grasp. The escape route led to a hidden sewer that ran beneath the East River. The air was thick and fetid, but it was their only chance. They emerged on the Brooklyn side, soaked and exhausted. Outside, Monroe unrolled one of the letters. They're planning to sabotage a continental supply convoy headed to New Jersey. If we don't warn our people, thousands could die. Sinclair looked out toward Manhattan, the city skyline glowing faintly in the dawn light. We've seen only a fraction of their operations. The labyrinth is just one part. The circle is everywhere, and every path we take could lead to a trap. Monroe clenched the journal to his chest. Then we move carefully. One step at a time, we dismantle them piece by piece, before the revolution itself falls into their hands. As the sun rose, the labyrinth beneath Manhattan remained silent, holding its secrets, but the first cracks in de Chadurkring's facade had begun to appear.
Chapter 6. The Betrayal Within. The safe house was quiet, too quiet. Monroe, Sinclair, and Reed had returned after the harrowing escape through the labyrinth, exhausted but determined. They spread the letters across the table, trying to decode the next moves of de Chadurkring. Sinclair frowned. Something feels off. Their operations are too precise, too fast. How did they know we intercepted the letters so quickly? Reed shifted uneasily. It doesn't make sense unless someone inside our circle is feeding them information. Monroe's eyes narrowed. A mole. We can't assume anyone is safe. Just then, a soft knock echoed from the front door. Margaret Sinclair's cousin, Eleanor, entered with a basket of provisions. She had been helping them gather intelligence in secret, or so they thought. "Eleanor," Monroe asked, suspicious, "how did you get past the patrols?" She smiled faintly. "I always find a way." But something in her eyes betrayed her calm demeanor. Reed whispered to Monroe, "I don't trust her." That night, as Monroe decoded one of the stolen letters, he noticed a discrepancy. Coordinates had been altered subtly. If they followed the directions exactly, they would walk into a trap. He confronted Eleanor quietly. "Did you touch the letters?" Her expression shifted instantly. The warm, familiar face vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating glare. "I'm sorry, Elias, but some knowledge is too powerful to leave in the wrong hands. The circle offered me protection, influence. I couldn't refuse." Sinclair gasped. "You betrayed us!" Eleanor nodded. "Not out of hate, but necessity. And now you must leave or you'll die tonight." Before they could react, a sharp noise echoed from the alley outside. The unmistakable sound of boots on cobblestones. Members of the circle had arrived, tipped off by Eleanor. Monroe grabbed Sinclair's hand. "We have to move, now." They darted through the back, barely evading a squad of armed, cloaked figures. Reed threw down lanterns to create smoke and confusion, and they ran into the maze of side streets. Once hidden, they paused, panting, hearts racing. "Eleanor." "She knew every move we would make," Monroe said grimly. "She was one of us, and yet she betrayed everything we stood for." Sinclair's jaw tightened. "Then we adapt. The circle may have spies in our midst, but we still have the journal, and knowledge. Knowledge can turn the tide." Monroe nodded. "We can't trust anyone blindly. From now on, every ally is suspect. Every plan must have contingencies. Eleanor has shown us just how dangerous a traitor can be." The betrayal stung deeper than any British soldier's blade could, but it also ignited a fire within them, a determination to dismantle the circle completely, no matter the cost. As the dawn broke over the East River, the streets of Manhattan seemed calm once more, but Monroe, Sinclair, and Reed knew that danger lurked in every shadow, and that the revolution itself hung precariously in the balance, teetering between freedom and the unseen hands of de Chadurkring. Chapter 7. The Secret Expedition. The city's skyline glowed under the first light of dawn, but Monroe could barely see it. His mind was consumed by the journal and the letters they had risked their lives to intercept. Eleanor's betrayal still lingered like a shadow over their mission. Sinclair spread a new set of letters across the table. Look at this. The Circle isn't just coordinating intelligence or supplies. They're planning something massive. A secret expedition right under the nose of the Continental Army. Monroe frowned. Where? Brooklyn, Staten Island, and worst of all, the abandoned fort at Governor's Island, a location that had been ignored by both sides for decades. According to the letters, the Circle planned to gather colonists, soldiers, and supplies there to secretly control the flow of weapons and information throughout New York and New Jersey. Reed leaned closer. And the journal confirms it. The coded maps show supply caches, meeting points, and hidden waterways connecting the forts. They can move troops and resources without anyone noticing. Sinclair's eyes narrowed. If we don't stop this expedition, they could gain control of the city and effectively sabotage the revolution before it even reaches full strength. Monroe clenched his fists. Then we intercept. Tonight. We'll take the letters, map their movements, and strike before they leave Governor's Island. The approach. Under cover of darkness, the trio sailed across the East River in a small rowboat, avoiding British patrols. The water was cold and the fog thickened as they neared Governor's Island. Monroe's hand rested on the journal, now wrapped in oilskin to protect it. Sinclair scanned the island. Lanterns flickered near the old barracks. There, she whispered. The Circle's expedition is being organized inside the main fort. They're moving crates, personnel, even mounted officers. Reed studied the maps. There's a service tunnel beneath the fort. It should lead directly to their central storage area. If we can access it, we can disrupt their supplies without alerting them to our presence. Monroe nodded. We'll split. Reed and I take the tunnel. Sinclair will monitor the courtyard. If anything goes wrong, we signal each other immediately. The tunnel. The tunnel was narrow, damp, and lined with rotting wooden supports. Every step echoed, threatening to give away their presence. Monroe's lantern illuminated a series of strange symbols carved into the walls, the same triangle serpent motif, now combined with new letters and numbers. Reed muttered, "They're tracking their own movements through these marks. If we follow carefully, we can anticipate where they'll go next." At the end of the tunnel, they found a hidden storage room stacked with crates of weapons, letters, and coded messages. Monroe quickly documented the contents, photographing the letters with a small camera. Suddenly, a faint whisper came from behind them. Monroe spun around. A shadow detached itself from the wall. It was Eleanor. "I warned you. Now you've gone too far. The Circle will not forgive this." Monroe's jaw tightened. "Why are you here? Didn't you betray us?" Eleanor smiled coldly. "I'm here to ensure you fail. But I must admit, you surprised me. Few make it this far." Before Monroe could respond, the tunnel shook. A small explosion rocked the far end, sending debris cascading toward them. Eleanor disappeared into the smoke, leaving Monroe and Reed scrambling to safety. The interception. Outside, Sinclair had created a diversion, setting a lantern on fire near the courtyard to draw guards away. Using the distraction, Monroe and Reed emerged from the tunnel and began relocating crates and removing the expedition letters. Within minutes, the expedition had been disrupted. Supplies were scattered, and the Circle's plans were thrown into chaos. Monroe held the journal tightly. "We've bought time, but this is just the beginning. The Circle will retaliate. They're not going to let us interfere without a fight." Sinclair joined them, eyes burning with determination. "Then we prepare. Every ally counts now, and every decision could be the difference between life and death." As the fog rolled back over Manhattan, the trio realized that the revolution was no longer only a war of armies, but a battle of secrets, strategy, and survival.
Chapter 8. The Hidden Council. The night was unusually still as Monroe, Sinclair, and Reed approached an abandoned mansion on the outskirts of Manhattan. According to the decoded letters, this was where the Circle convened its hidden council, the core decision-makers who controlled operations across the colonies. Sinclair peered through a broken window. "There," she whispered. "The chamber is lit by lanterns, but there's something strange. The light doesn't flicker normally. It's almost alive." Monroe's heart pounded. This is it, the center of the entire circle. If we understand them, we might finally gain the upper hand. They slipped inside through a concealed side door, moving silently across the polished floors. The chamber beyond was vast, lined with tapestries depicting strange symbols, triangles intertwined with serpents, stars, and cryptic Latin inscriptions. At the center of the room, cloaked figures sat around a long table. One of them, taller than the others, radiated authority. His face was hidden, but the aura of control was unmistakable. Monroe whispered, "The Grand Master, and the rest, the council members." The Grand Master spoke, his voice echoing softly. "Reports indicate an interference at Governor's Island. Someone has tampered with the supplies." A woman beside him, her hood embroidered with golden threads, replied calmly, "Our spies have noted the presence of intruders. They are clever, but they underestimate the Circle." Monroe's stomach tightened. They were close enough to hear, but not close enough to intervene without being detected. Reed leaned in, scanning the documents on the table. They're planning a series of coordinated strikes. New York, New Jersey, and even parts of Pennsylvania. Entire continental supply chains could be disrupted. Sinclair's eyes narrowed. "We need to get closer if we can copy those plans." Monroe nodded. "We'll split. Reed and I will attempt to access the documents while Sinclair keeps watch." The document heist. Creeping along a side alcove, Monroe and Reed reached the table. Lantern light flickered over letters, maps, and strange devices they had never seen before. Instruments for encryption and signaling that were centuries ahead of their time. Monroe carefully photographed the documents, noting coordinates, meeting schedules, and supply routes. Reed whispered, "If we follow these, we can predict every move they make in the next month." Suddenly, a shadow moved behind them. Monroe froze. The Grand Master had risen, his presence overwhelming. "You have trespassed far enough. Few survive this chamber." Monroe and Reed glanced at each other. The plan they had so carefully crafted seemed suddenly inadequate. But then Sinclair struck, tossing a small smoke device she had prepared. The room erupted in a cloud of thick, choking smoke. Through the haze, Monroe, Reed, and Sinclair slipped into a hidden corridor marked with the same triangle serpent motif. The council's voices echoed behind them, angry and commanding, but they could not see their targets in the smoke. Escape and revelation. Once outside, breathing heavily, Monroe held the journal tightly. "We've seen their core. We know their plans now. But their power, it's unlike anything we imagined. They're not just manipulating information, they're manipulating outcomes. Entire colonies, entire armies, all at their whim." Sinclair shivered. "And now we're on their radar. They'll come for us." Reed nodded grimly. "Then we make our next move carefully. We can dismantle the Circle, but only if we stay ahead of them. One mistake, and the revolution could be lost before it truly begins." As the first light of dawn touched the skyline, the three realized the enormity of the task before them: infiltrate, expose, and destroy a society that had been shaping the colonies from the shadows for decades, all while staying alive in a war that had just become infinitely more dangerous. Chapter 9. The Siege of Shadows. The night air over Manhattan was thick with tension. Every alley, every rooftop, Every shadow seemed alive with the unseen presence of Diskedukring. Monroe, Sinclair, and Reed had gathered all the intelligence they could from the Hidden Council, and now it was time to strike directly at the Circle's operations. Sinclair spread a map of the city. The Circle's supply hubs are concentrated along the East River. If we can disable them simultaneously, we could cripple their network for weeks. Monroe traced the routes with his finger. We'll split into 3 teams. Reed and I take the northern warehouses. Sinclair, you and your allies handle the southern hub. Timing is critical. One misstep and the entire plan collapses. Reed adjusted his cloak nervously. This is insane. If we're caught... Monroe placed a hand on his shoulder. We won't be. Not if we stick to the shadows. The northern assault. Monroe and Reed moved silently along the docks, their movements synchronized like trained operatives. Lanterns flickered inside the warehouses, revealing guards and patrolling cloaked members of the Circle. Monroe whispered, "The crates are booby-trapped. Watch your step." Reed nodded. Using small tools, they disarmed the traps and began relocating critical supplies, letters, weapons, and coded messages to hidden storage points controlled by their allies. Every second felt like an eternity, the shadows concealing their movements but not their racing hearts. Suddenly, a guard turned a corner, dagger in hand. Monroe reacted instantly, pushing Reed into cover and using a smoke device to create chaos. The guard coughed and stumbled, giving them just enough time to continue their mission. The southern hub. Meanwhile, Sinclair led her team through a series of hidden alleys to the southern warehouses. Using signals and coded knocks, they moved past guards and surveillance devices. Sinclair whispered, "We only have one chance. Disrupt the shipments, scatter the intelligence, and get out." Her team worked quickly, removing crates and burning select documents. Lanterns flickered, alarms were nearly raised, but Sinclair's tactical coordination allowed them to complete the mission without being captured. Reunion and revelation. By midnight, Monroe, Sinclair, and Reed regrouped at a safe house overlooking the harbor. The Circle's operations had been crippled, and for the first time they felt a measure of hope. Monroe spread the journal and intercepted letters across the table. "We've delayed them, but this is only temporary. The Circle's reach is enormous. If we want lasting impact, we need to expose their leadership, their hidden council, to the Continental Congress itself." Sinclair nodded, eyes fierce. "And we will. But we need allies, influential ones, people who can act when we cannot." Reed looked out the window at the sleeping city. The revolution was supposed to be about liberty, but now I see it's also a battle of knowledge. Secrets, manipulation, and courage will decide who wins. Monroe closed the journal, determination burning in his eyes. "Then we prepare. The final confrontation is coming, and we will meet it head-on, in the shadows or in the light. Diskedukring may control the present, but we will shape the future." As the first rays of dawn touched the East River, the trio knew the siege of shadows was only the beginning. The ultimate confrontation with the Circle, their hidden council, their secrets, their power, was yet to come. Chapter 10. The Final Revelation. The air in the abandoned fort on Governor's Island was thick with anticipation. Monroe, Sinclair, and Reed had spent weeks tracking the Hidden Council's movements, deciphering every coded message, and assembling a small but loyal team of allies. Tonight, everything would come to a head. "Are we ready?" Sinclair asked, her voice barely a whisper. Monroe adjusted the journal in his satchel. "As ready as we can be. We either expose them tonight, or the revolution is in jeopardy." Reed's hand rested on the hilt of a dagger. No turning back now. Infiltrating the fort. The trio moved under the cover of darkness, using hidden tunnels leading into the fort. Lanterns glimmered faintly through broken windows. Guards patrolled the perimeter, but the group navigated silently, guided by maps derived from the journal and the intercepted letters. Inside, the hidden council convened, unaware that their secrets were about to be revealed. The Grand Master, flanked by his inner circle, spread plans across a long table, supply lines, troop movements, coded messages, and a network of spies embedded in both British and Continental forces. Monroe whispered, "This is it. Every conspiracy, every manipulation laid bare." Sinclair nodded. "We need evidence. We can't just disrupt. We must reveal them to the world." Monroe stepped into the chamber, journal in hand, lantern casting shadows across the council members' faces. "You have hidden in darkness for too long. We know your plans, your codes, your manipulations. The revolution belongs to the people, not to your secret society." The Grand Master rose slowly. "So, the mice finally speak. You understand nothing of power. Knowledge is not just a weapon. It is the very fabric that shapes history." Sinclair's eyes blazed. "Then we will use your own knowledge against you." Reed distributed copies of the intercepted letters and photos of the coded maps to allies waiting at strategic points outside. Soon, Continental leaders and key revolutionary figures were reviewing undeniable proof of the Circle's manipulations. The collapse of the Circle. Panic rippled through the hidden council. Guards were confused, allies turned against them, and chaos erupted. The Grand Master tried to escape, but Monroe anticipated his route, blocking the exit. "You underestimated us," Monroe said. "The revolution is not just about armies. It's about truth, strategy, and courage. Your shadows end tonight." The Grand Master, realizing defeat was inevitable, surrendered. The remaining council members scattered, their carefully constructed network dismantled in a single night. A new dawn. By sunrise, Manhattan had begun to stir. News of the hidden council's exposure spread quickly through the colonies. With their hidden manipulations revealed, Continental leaders gained a newfound clarity, enabling them to direct their forces with unprecedented coordination. Monroe, Sinclair, and Reed stood on the docks, watching the river glitter in the morning light. "We've won a battle, but the revolution continues. Knowledge can be a weapon, and now it's in the right hands." Sinclair smiled faintly. "We've shown that shadows can be fought, that secrets can be exposed. History will remember this night." Reed nodded. "And maybe, just maybe, future generations will understand the true cost of freedom, not only courage in battle, but vigilance in the shadows." As the sun rose over Manhattan, the city seemed brighter, alive with possibility. The hidden council of Deshadukring had been dismantled, their plots unmasked, and the revolution and the promise of liberty remained in the hands of those who dared to uncover the truth.